Welcome to the Leadership Bootcamp podcast. This is Jeff Strauss. Today, I'll be speaking about the difference between mentoring and coaching, when to choose which and why, and how to find a coach or mentor that can help you move past personal or professional blockers. Now, coaching and mentoring are sometimes used synonymously, especially by people who aren't in the leadership development space, but even quite often by people who are in the professional development industry too. They are, in fact, distinct concepts. The growing body of literature on the topic generally summarizes the relationship between coaching and mentoring as parallel activities that complement each other, because while there are some areas of overlap, there are also quite distinct differences between the two. It's important to understand these distinctions because depending on the stage of your professional development, choosing one may be more beneficial than another until you find yourself at another stage where you'll have to evaluate your options once again. Whether it's coaching or mentoring, the lack of understanding of each one's purpose, both by the organization and often by the practitioner, can undermine the efficacy of the entire practice. Okay, so before we get into the specific differences, let's talk about some of the overlap, the organizational reasons why coaching and mentoring are important. The motivation behind the practices is employee development. Those are the key words. Employee development is a critical component of a well-functioning organization's efforts to improve quality, retain key employees, meet the challenges of a turbulent market, and incorporate continuous improvement practices into organizational design and culture. Coaching and mentoring can also facilitate employee development by inspiring desired behaviors and attitudes toward change, the development of skills germane to the development of the business, and the development of skills to navigate many types of work relationships, from peer-to-peer to customer relationships to relationships with superiors or subordinates, all of which require some degree of idiosyncratic nuance, which can come more easily to some than to others. In my lecture series, I've created numerous videos on employee development which complement this information in this podcast. You can find that series on my website, jeffstrauss.net. Now, both coaching and mentoring are primarily one-on-one relationships, which provide personalized support and enable deeper reflection, feedback, and tailored guidance to the mentee or the coachee. Now, although a one-on-one relationship creates a great opportunity to develop a high-quality connection, there are other mechanisms too, like mentoring or coaching in groups and action learning teams, which are small groups of individuals from different areas of an organization brought together to solve real-world problems in real time. They're sort of like agile, self-organized teams or tiger teams. Regardless of the approach, the overlapping outcomes between these types of mentoring or coaching are similar, creating a long-term impact through the introduction of new development practices, building an organizational learning culture, and fostering positive relationships between coach or mentor and coachee and mentee, between managers and their direct reports, and between cross-functional disciplines in the workplace. So let's dive into coaching first. Coaching is a process-oriented engagement focused on skill development and performance, meant to provide guidance on a specific task by an individual who has a generalist background and experience, but can provide a structured approach for accomplishing specific objectives. Mentoring, on the other hand, is a situation-oriented engagement, often performed by a specialist with a background in a particular industry who facilitates the transfer of personal experiences of doing business and solving specific problems to facilitate aspects of career growth. Okay, so a lot of sort of technical language involved there. Let's take a more practical example to help ground these words in reality. I recently recorded a video in my lecture series called Leadership 911. It's a term coined by my friend Jonathan Head, a leader at AEG Worldwide, the world's leading sports and live entertainment company. He called me one evening to discuss a problem he was having in his leadership practice. Now, at different points in the conversation, I played the role of either a coach or a mentor. Jonathan was sharing a difficulty he was having with accountability on his team, and on this topic, I shared with him some of my personal experiences in similar situations. Recall that mentoring is a situation oriented engagement, often performed by a specialist with a background in a particular industry who facilitates the transfer of personal experiences of doing business and solving specific problems. So, in that part of the conversation, that was my role as a mentor. At another point in the conversation, Jonathan was seeking guidance about executive communication. At that point, my role switched to playing a coach, giving Jonathan guidance on a specific process to use to accomplish a specific task. A little later in this podcast, I'll dive a bit deeper into this concept and discuss the interesting mentor and coach role that skilled leaders perform to elicit the best performance from their own teams. But before we dive into that, we should answer the question, when do you choose mentoring over coaching and vice versa? Generally speaking, coaching is a more effective approach when trying to address a specific skills gap in situations needing immediate improvement in job performance or behavior, or for professional and sometimes also called executive development to coach leaders to hone soft skills, manage stress, or navigate organizational dynamics. Mentoring in general is a more effective approach for broad career guidance, like when you're addressing long-term career planning and navigating complex organizational structures, to glean industry-specific insights or make industry-specific connections, understanding the unwritten rules of an organization, and when in need of a role model to help mentees build professional identities and networks. So if you're seeking guidance, now you should have a bit more insight into what type of guidance would be best for you. But let's switch the angle on the conversation and talk about you as a leader providing guidance to your team. Now you're the coach or mentor, and that role is part and parcel of leadership responsibilities in many high-performing organizations. Are you prepared to take that role on? Let's talk a little bit about it. Being a coaching manager is a way to motivate, develop, and retain employees. Quote, manager as a coach, unquote, is defined as a managerial practice that helps employees learn and improve problem work performance by providing guidance, encouragement, and support. To be more specific, it's an ongoing process for improving work performance, helping employees recognizing opportunities to improve their performance and capabilities, empowering employees to exceed prior levels of performance, and giving guidance, encouragement, and support to the learner, i.e., the employee you're coaching. It's a leadership approach based on constructive feedback that is designed to bring the most out of people by showing that they're respected and valued, empowered to make their own decisions, supported in unleashing their potential, enabled to learn and encouraged to bounce back from failure, and supported by leadership invested in their performance. Now, if you're listening to this podcast and you happen to be one of my colleagues, you've heard me wax poetic about the importance of skills training. And here's yet another reason why. Feedback is a skill. Delivering quality feedback, and receiving it for that matter, is not an innate behavior. It is a learned and honed skill that doesn't come naturally to most people. And giving effective feedback is so crucial to job satisfaction, personal capability, motivation, engagement, organizational commitment, and decreased attrition, among a number of other factors, that every leader should strive to improve this skill to maximize their effectiveness as a coaching leader. In my lecture series, I have a video on giving effective feedback where you can pick up some crucial skills and strategies in this area. You should also check out my video on employee engagement, which has some more details in some of these areas. You can find both of those videos in the lecture series on my website. Now let's talk about the role of manager as mentor, because there's a place for that too. As I mentioned earlier, as opposed to coaching, which is a process-oriented approach to performance improvement, mentoring, again, is a situation-oriented approach. So rather than focusing on a specific task, mentoring becomes valuable when an employee seeks career advancement or personal development beyond their current role. Mentors can share their knowledge, experiences, and insights on navigating career paths, building networks, and overcoming sector-specific challenges. Mentoring is also valuable when a mentee needs a deeper understanding of the industry they're in, or the organizational cultures that exist within that industry, because a mentor with experience in the field can offer valuable insights into the unwritten rules of the business, which is an effective approach for employees who may not yet have encountered nuances related to the field and would benefit from a mentor's knowledge. Let me share another personal anecdote about a mentoring opportunity, this time about my colleague Nikki, who was actually the subject of another video I made in my lecture series on the importance of a positive attitude. Nikki's first foray into the fast-paced world of the tech sector was when she joined my team in early 2024. Nikki is an asset manager responsible for the control and process streamlining of our global supply chain and the inventory that moves within it. And this is a role that exists in numerous industries, but in the tech world, and perhaps my team, has some unique features. For one, tech is really fast-paced. Nikki was in academic publishing for many years prior to joining my team, and that's arguably a slower moving industry than tech. So one of the difficulties that she encountered when joining my team was the pace of it all. Combined with the speed is the autonomy that I want my team to execute with. So I empower everyone on my team to execute our shared vision as they see fit, trusting their expertise and experience to achieve it, and seeking guidance from me or someone else when necessary, but not necessarily asking for approval to do things. And this was a bit of a different culture than Nikki was used to, and for the first few months on my team, as she found her footing, I worked with her to let her know that she can use her skills to be creative, challenge the status quo, and make her own decisions to accomplish our goals. I may have created a monster because since then, new policy documents have been flying at me left and right, but that's not a bad thing. So I remember my own first steps into tech when I started working for a startup after years of working in academia myself. I knew what Nikki was experiencing because I had also experienced it. The cultures are just different, and they take some getting used to, and a mentor can be your Sherpa, giving breathing advice and pointing out the right footing on your path to the summit without actually instructing you how to operate your respiratory equipment. In this particular situation, I was able to perform many of the mentoring responsibilities I've mentioned earlier, helping Nikki develop sector-specific knowledge, supporting Nikki's development through sharing my experiences, fostering Nikki's confidence and enabling her to develop her own unique style and perspectives, and guiding Nikki through a major transition into a new industry by understanding its organizational dynamics. You can see how this is different than coaching, where I might have given Nikki specific advice on how to write a business case, for example. This raises an interesting question if you're a leader. Do you have the skills or experience to coach or mentor? If so, if you have the specific situational or process experience to operate in one or both of these roles, that is wonderful. But if not, that's also okay. If you have a career development conversation, say with a direct report, and you come away feeling like you struggled to give guidance, there's no shame in connecting them with someone who can. I, in particular, have a long-time interest in information security and cryptography. But if someone on my team came to me and said they wanted to move into a role like that in 3 years, I don't have the process or situational experience to give the kind of guidance they need. But I can connect them to someone in my network who can give them the guidance they need. And in that way, I'm actually performing some mentorship duties by helping that individual create a professional network of their own. For more information on this topic, I have a video on mapping your developmental network in my lecture series, again on my website, jeffstrauss.net. Moreover, it is a good idea to have a mentor or coach of your own, even if you're a skilled leader. I've spoken on the importance of this in past podcasts and videos, so I won't rehash the conversation, but suffice to say that the most successful people in the world have mentors or coaches, and many of the most successful companies in the world have internal professional development functions with coaching and mentoring as core components for all levels of the organization, from individual contributors all the way up to top executives. On that note, a brief discussion about the benefit of coaching or mentoring on different levels in the organization. For entry-level employees, these practices provide foundational support that help them understand the organization and build essential skills. Coaching can help entry-level employees acquire critical skills from their roles by providing feedback, on specific tasks and behaviors valued in the organization. Mentoring can guide new employees through understanding and adapting to organizational culture, which can help them feel more comfortable and engaged in the new environment. Both of these practices can help entry-level employees gain confidence in their abilities, allowing them to perform independently and take ownership of their responsibilities sooner. Okay, take a deep breath while I share another personal anecdote, but this one is short. I was in a class recently, and one of my classmates shared the experience of a new hire at a company, quote, drinking from the fire hose, unquote. And we've all experienced that before. We join a company, we're left to our own devices to figure things out. It can be a daunting experience. While the conversation we were having was in the context of knowledge transfer, it's still a perfect anecdote to share in this podcast because with a guide, a new hire can have a much more productive experience than being left to review a mountain of documents, watch dozens of training videos, and be thrust into their new work and culture and left to sink or swim. Many companies, mine included, have what's called an onboarding buddy who is responsible to act as this guide and help a new hire acclimate to their new environment, work process, culture, and so forth. So for first level managers, we're going one level higher in the organizational hierarchy now from individual contributors, or rather entry level contributors to first level managers. Coaching and mentoring become crucial as they transition from technical roles, for example, from an individual contributor, to a manager responsibility. Coaching provides tailored support to build core managerial skills like delegation, conflict resolution, feedback, team management, managing complexity and ambiguity, and so many more things. Mentoring from experienced managers helps new managers navigate the complexities of people management, offering real-world advice on handling team dynamics and resolving interpersonal issues, and mentors introduce first-level managers to cross-functional contacts, expanding their internal networks and fostering a better understanding of organizational processes. Now, moving one layer up, we're focusing on managers of managers. For managers of managers, coaching and mentoring can help with the skills and understanding to handle the complexities of leading multiple teams and shaping mid-level organizational strategy. Coaching can improve strategic thinking, helping managers of managers balance short-term needs with long-term organizational goals, which is critical as they align team objectives with the company's vision. Through coaching, these managers can learn to coach their direct reports effectively, reinforcing a culture of growth and accountability throughout their teams. And mentors experienced at senior levels can provide valuable insights on complex decision-making and organizational priorities, helping to guide managers of managers in tackling larger-scale challenges and aligning with executive goals. Now, finally, we reach the zenith: executives. For execs, coaching and mentoring are essential for sustaining performance, managing large-scale change, and fostering personal resilience. Influence is a critical component of an executive's role, and coaching helps executives refine their executive presence and communication skills to influence effectively. Mentoring by other senior leaders or perhaps board members support executives in addressing high-stakes challenges like organizational transformation, managing crises, and leading innovation. For a bit more context on some of these topics, particularly with managing crises and organizational transformation, I did a podcast recently on why company reorganizations feel chaotic. So you can find that podcast and listen to it. I think it's pretty interesting. Now, finally, through coaching, executives receive candid feedback on their leadership styles, promoting self-awareness and continuous professional development and personal development that enables them to model exemplary leadership across the organization. And as I've said many, many times before, modeling leadership is a crucial component of a leader's role, right? What is modeled is followed. Now, coaching and mentoring certainly seem crucial to so many aspects of personal and organizational success, but could there be a downside or a time when these tools are just not appropriate? They are not a panacea. There are times where they are inappropriate. It could be that an individual is not ready to be coached or mentored. If coachees or mentees are not ready to accept feedback, they're defensive or are resistant to change, or they're unwilling to reflect on their behaviors, they probably won't benefit as much from coaching or mentoring. A good mentor or coach will provide honest, sometimes critical feedback to facilitate growth, but without receptivity by the coachee or the mentee, that feedback can be ignored or rejected, which will obviously reduce the coaching or mentoring effectiveness and make it difficult to build the mutual trust that's essential to developing the high quality relationship required between these two individuals. Now, at the core of the issue is the desire for self improvement. If a coachee or mentee is comfortable with the status quo or is unaware of their developmental needs, or worse, they think they have nothing to learn, they'll need a different form of intervention. In these cases, I'd recommend direct performance feedback or a formal training program to facilitate personal and professional development until they reach a point where they can engage in better self reflection. Oh, another reason why coaching or mentoring might not be the appropriate choice for development is if there is a need for immediate, tangible results. Coaching and mentoring are often longer term processes with gradual incremental gains. Mentoring in particular is best facilitated with a long term relationship, whereas coaching is generally medium to long term. Both coaching and mentoring relationships should be designed to promote sustained growth, and mentoring in particular often focuses on holistic career development rather than short term performance improvements. For people who need immediate skills acquisition or performance corrections, targeted training or direct feedback may be better suited for those individuals than mentoring or coaching, as neither are quick fixes. Another common reason to look for an alternative intervention to coaching or mentoring is when the relationship influences perceptions of confidentiality, trust, or loyalty. Whether or not we want to believe it, organizational dynamics, including political conflicts and hierarchical boundaries, can complicate coaching or mentoring relationships. For example, if political conflicts or competing priorities exist within an organization, individuals may feel unsafe sharing openly, fearing repercussions or breaches of confidentiality, which is especially relevant with an internal mentoring or coaching program and a coach or mentor who might be aligned a certain way organizationally. So, hierarchically, for example, if a mentor or coach has a dual role as a coachee or mentee's supervisor, we talked about manager as coach, it could feasibly lead to conflicts of interest. During a difficult organizational time at one of my previous employers, where I was strongly supporting the needs of my direct reports, I was told that I was focused on supporting them too much, losing focus on my alignment with leadership. And I mention that because if a supervisor is seen as a quote ally unquote of leadership, people may feel reluctant to be vulnerable and share openly. So, in cases where internal conflicts of this type may arise, it's advisable to seek external coaching or mentoring, but it's even more advisable for an employer to implement a structured program to build trust and facilitate communication across teams to help address underlying organizational conflicts. Yet another area where I'm a strong believer in structured training. Now, crucially, there are segments of the population for whom coaching or mentoring is just not appropriate. Certain neurodivergent populations require accommodations that coaching or mentoring simply can't address. And those individuals who suffer from chronic stress, anxiety, unresolved personal issues, or a host of other emotional support issues or even mental support issues require support from mental health professionals. Coaching and mentoring are not substitutes for professional counseling. Okay, so finding the right coach or mentor is not a particularly easy task given all that we've learned about how important coaching and mentoring is and all of the nuances between them and when they should function and when they don't. There are dozens of coaching and mentoring companies out there and tens of thousands of coaches and mentors who have certifications and levels of training and experience of all varieties. Essentially, there are a few things to consider when looking for the right coach or mentor. First, you've got to find the right fit. There should be alignment of values, goals, and communication styles between the coach or mentor and the coachee or mentee. As we've discussed in some depth, for mentors, Relevant industry experience is invaluable, and while both coaches and mentors should have strong interpersonal skills, coaches should have strong process orientation to help develop specific skills. And both coaches and mentors should have strong professional and personal ethics, be able to maintain confidentiality, and have a strong sense of integrity. When entering either a mentoring or coaching relationship, you should expect to define a mission for the relationship and set some norms like a meeting schedule and an agenda. A coaching engagement is generally for a shorter time frame than a mentoring engagement, whereas a mentoring relationship typically lasts longer. And speaking generally, coaching is schedule based and mentoring is demand driven, features which align with the characteristics of each type of relationship, as I've discussed earlier in the podcast, namely that coaching is skills focused and time bound, whereas mentoring is relationship focused and a little bit more fluid. Now, unless you're working at a mature and generally financially stable company, it's not likely that you'll find an internal, centrally managed coaching or mentoring program, which would typically be run by a human resources or personnel development team. Nonetheless, over the past 2 decades, coaching and mentoring have become a significant part of many organizations' learning and development strategies because the lack of transfer and lack of sustained behavioral change resulting from typical corporate training programs have pointed toward the need for more individualized, engaged, and context-specific learning. In a previous podcast I recorded on why corporate training doesn't work, I discussed this in depth, so check that out if you're interested. If you're in an HR team and you're looking to kick off a coaching or mentoring program and you have a budget, that is great. Seek out a third party that can facilitate. There are some big ones out there. If you're on a shoestring budget or need to bootstrap a program, do what the mystics say. Look inward. There are certainly skilled people within your organization that can serve as mentors or coaches, and once you've identified them, putting the program together is quite fun, and it will absolutely take off once people start to experience the value of these relationships. There is a plethora of information out there and many wonderful books on the topic that can guide you towards putting together a great program. And of course, if you're interested in starting a program but just don't know where to begin, feel free to reach out to me and I'll put you in touch with some people in my network. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Leadership Bootcamp podcast. If you found this useful, please subscribe to the channel and share this podcast on your social media platforms. It really is a huge help.